Good morning. I wanted to record this presentation so that perhaps we can bring some clarity to what our current situation is relative to our business community, all as a consequence of the governor's actions beginning on March 16th up to and including what occurred yesterday, April 27th, 2020. I know as of yesterday morning, I was somewhat excited, if you will, because I thought that we would be able to see a major relaxation of some of the measures that have been imposed on our businesses, and that we could begin to see a significant reopening of our local and statewide economy. Unfortunately, we did not get the news from the governor that we were anticipating. And very briefly, I sort of want to tell you, from what I understand, what the governor did yesterday. The first thing he did, beyond any question, it's not hard to understand this, is that he extended the stay-at-home order from April 30th to May 15th. So he extended it for another 2 weeks plus a day. As far as businesses are concerned, there was no significant change in what businesses can or cannot do, what businesses can remain open, or what businesses must close, with two exceptions. One exception is any restaurant-type business that sells foods can allow customers to consume the food outdoors if there's a patio or outdoor dining area connected with the business. Now understand that from my reading of the documents or the press releases that came after the press conference where the governor announced this, the waiters or waitresses cannot come out and serve you at those tables. You can only go in the place of business and pick up the food to take out and consume it outdoors, or if it's a curbside delivery, you can take the food, sit at an outdoor table and consume the food, but there's no waitress exchanges. If there's any clarity on that part of the executive orders, the parish government will most assuredly impart that message to the community. But as of this point in time, the governor's action, I think, is pretty clear. The second change from the current status is that the governor announced a requirement that all employees that interact with the public for any type of business, any type, grocery store, whatever, that's allowed to be open, any employee must wear a mask if that employee is interacting with the public, with patrons of the business. Beyond that, there was no changes. However, there is still a great deal of confusion as to what businesses can and cannot transact any type of activity. And what I want to do is spend a few minutes and explain the classifications of businesses that have been established by virtue of the executive orders of the governor. And I believe that some of the misunderstanding has been crystallized or enhanced by virtue of some of the actions that various neighboring parishes have adopted beginning April 16th up to and including yesterday, April 27th. So I'm kind of asked that you just sit back and sort of let me go over the whole history, and I think I can clarify everything for you. The first executive order that's of any significance for businesses would have been Executive Order 30 JBE 2020 that was executed, that went into effect on March 16th of this year. In that executive order, the governor closed all certain types of businesses. These were fitness centers, movie theaters, bars, bowling alleys, and several more similar type businesses. On March 16th, the governor also closed all restaurants, coffee shops, and cafes to on-premise dining, meaning you could not go into a restaurant, sit down at a table, be waited on, order your food. Rather, the governor said that restaurants, cafes, and coffee shops could only provide food services by takeout, curbside delivery, or home deliveries. There could be no on-premise dining. Now, we do know that was modified yesterday. You can pick your food up, bring it outside to a dining area if the business has that accommodation. No service though, just dining on the premises outdoors as of yesterday. Again, this was on March 16th of this year. Then on March 22nd, 2020, the governor issued a proclamation effective March 23rd. That was proclamation or executive order number 33 JBE 2020. This was the first stay-at-home order. In this particular order, the governor determined that certain businesses had to continue to be closed, but certain businesses could continue to transact business. So let me break down what he did by virtue of this proclamation. He established certain classifications of businesses. As I analyze them, those classifications fall into 4 categories. The first classification will be the businesses that he closed outright. Those are the bars, the bowling alleys, tattoo parlors, those types of things. And he also, he had done that originally on March 16th. He just extended the type of businesses that had to be closed. That would include barbershops and those types. So we have this category of businesses now, as of, without any doubt, as of March 22nd, 2020, that has to close, period. Again, we know what those are. Those are the bars, the beauty salons, the tattoo parlors, the barbershops, the lounges, the bars, all those types of businesses. Then the second classification would be the restaurants, cafes, and coffee shops, which, again, by virtue of 33 JBE 2020, the March 22nd proclamation, were allowed to continue to do business, but not any on-premises dining, rather only home delivery, curbside delivery, or takeout type activities. Then the third classification of business was what was called and what is referred to as essential businesses. I don't like that term essential because it causes confusions, because the order also talks about essential workers. So for our purposes, let's kind of keep essential to a minimum. The third category, businesses that provide, quote, essential services as defined by the Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency of the Department of Homeland Security, CISA. The governor said, in my third classification of businesses, those businesses deemed essential by CISA guidelines can remain open without restriction. And that's the construction business, the grocery stores, those types of businesses that generally we associate with large enterprises. Also construction industry and governmental offices. So those types of businesses could continue to transact activities without restrictions. Then there's a fourth classification of business. This is where people apparently got confused. That's all other businesses. And the governor said, by virtue of his executive order on March 22nd, that all other businesses all businesses other than those first three categories could continue to be open, provided those businesses met three criteria. Number one, that the number of people in the business never exceed 10. Number two, the only workers would have to be essential workers, essential to that business. I like to use the word necessary. Okay, so only the necessary people to run the business could be there, and counting the employees and patrons, no more than 10 at one time. And then the third criteria for that onerous classification, classification number 4, was that you had to practice social distancing when you transacted the business. You know, the 6 feet apart. You had to meet that criteria. So those are the three criteria for all other businesses. Now, I will admit that as drafted, this March 22nd executive order was a little bit confusing. And a part of the confusion was it talked about essential workers and essential businesses, and you kind of got them mixed up. And I get that, I understand that. What we did in St. Martin Parish is we immediately reached out to GOSEP, the Governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness, for clarification on certain provisions of that executive order. And the reason we reached out to GOSEP was because Section 6 of this order gave GOSEP the authority, working with local Office of Emergency Preparedness, part of parish government, the enforcement capability for this proclamation. So by reaching out to GOSEP and having some discussions, sometimes not very calm discussions, we were able to bring clarity to what the governor meant by 33 JBE 2020. And I published just what I've explained to you, the 4 classifications of businesses. I published an outline in a March 25th post on our website, on the parish government website. And as a matter of fact, on about 4 other occasions within 10 days, I referred to that outline and explained again what businesses could be open. So, in St. Martin Parish government, we were fully cognizant and aware that all businesses could continue to transact operations if they did not fall in one of those 3 categories, except that what that 4th area had to do was practice those 3 criteria or meet those 3 criteria. No confusion or misunderstanding on our part. Then on April 2nd of this year, the governor issued a proclamation or executive order number 41 JBE 2020. In that executive order, the governor extended the stay-at-home order to April 30th and then repeated what he had said in the previous executive orders about businesses, except that what he did this time, I believe, is make it a lot clearer relative to that 4th classification of businesses. In that executive order, he says, look, all beauty parlors, lounges, tattoo parlors, barber shops, bowling alleys, movie theaters, all those type of businesses have to close. All amusement parks have to close. No exception. Then the governor said all restaurants, cafes, and coffee shops can continue to do business, but no on-premise dining. They must only provide takeout services, home delivery services, or curbside services. Again, repeating what he'd done before. Then he said all businesses deemed necessary under CISA, that's security, cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency guidelines, as those guidelines define necessary businesses, could remain open without exception. Repeated that. Then he said, as to the 4th category, he said, and I will read it specifically in section 2C of his order on April 2nd, 2020. 2020. Quote, any business not covered by the guidance from CISA discussed in Section 2A and not ordered closed in subsection B above may continue operations. And then he lists those 3 criteria that you had to meet. So, at least as of April 2nd, there was no ambiguity or area that would cause a misinterpretation as existed in 33 JBE 2020. And we again referenced that in some of our posts on the parish government website. I thought all that was very clear. I thought that we had availed ourselves of mechanisms to inform the public in St. Martin Parish of what businesses could remain open. Unfortunately, some of our parishes recently, beginning on April 16th, began to talk about reopening gray area businesses. And from April 16th up until yesterday, as I alluded to previously, some of our neighboring parishes were still having press conferences or whatever, declaring that they were reopening these middle of the picture type businesses or the gray area businesses. And that prompted a lot of confusion among our residents here in St. Martin Parish, like, hey, can we be open? What's going on? And of course, our response is, if you fit into that 4th category, you could have always been open. And we published that. We enunciated that, again, beginning on March 25th, 2020. So, as I sit here today, as I sit here now, please understand that if you have not specifically, if you're a business that has not been specifically closed, the barbershops, beauty salons, and so forth, if you're a business that is not deemed necessary or essential under the CISA guidelines, or if you're not a restaurant, coffee shop, or cafe, you can be open so long as you meet now 4 criteria. The 3 that's been around since March 22nd. No more than 10 people in the business place. Only the necessary workers for the business has to be present, and practicing social distancing as a mandate. You can be open if you meet those 3 criteria. There's a 4th criteria now. That's what was imposed by the governor yesterday in his most recent executive order. You've got to wear a mask if you interact with the public. The employee has to wear a mask. So, I hope I've clarified this situation for you. If there still remains any confusion, I have formed a committee, and we formed that committee in anticipation of the reopening of some of the previously closed business. We had discussions about this very issue last Thursday afternoon and again this morning, which is Tuesday, April 28th. And we're going to be articulating just what I have indicated to you and in many different media to make sure everybody understands what the rules are. Just one final observation. Many people say, well, what are the penalties if we don't follow the rules? Well, I don't like to talk about what the penalties are. I know some of the penalties that some of our neighbors have imposed. I'm not sure they can do it legally, but that's for them to work out, not us. I believe our communities, we're going to come together as we have up to this point in time. All of our mayors have come together, parish governments come together, our superintendent of schools, our sheriff's office. We've all come together to try to get to this common ground and work together to make sure that we do every doggone thing we possibly can to help our community get through this. It kind of leads me to why we're here, why we did not have a complete reopening of our economy. According to the governor's comments yesterday, in order to start the reopening of the community, we have to meet 3 what's called gating criteria established by the Center for Disease Control and adopted by President Trump. And Governor John Bel Edwards relies on these grading criteria. There's 3 of them that we have to meet in order to start what's called phase 1 reopening. Unfortunately, in this state and in this region, in Acadiana, in St. Martin Parish, we have not met one of the criteria that was necessary to be satisfied. And that criteria is that we have not experienced a 14-day downward trajectory of positive cases. Our rate of positive cases, the rate of increase is going down. Going down, the rate, but it's still going up. Okay, it's not where we need it to be. Or the percentage, even the percentage of positive tests being reported is still not going down. We've got to meet that criteria. And I invite you to go to the Department of Health website. There's an interesting chart that kind of outlines where we're deficient, and I've studied that as a consequence of the governor's action. So we got to meet that 3rd criteria. Once we meet that, and I'm optimistic we're going to meet it. I really am, and I think we're close to it, and I think we're going to meet it. And all I can do is, and I know it's frustrating for me personally, but we just got to follow the stay-at-home measures that the governor's imposed. Those stay-at-home measures have gotten us from significant increasing in numbers that we were experiencing in the early part of April and late March. We got to the point where we're going down. We just hadn't got down enough. If we continue to adhere to those measures, this causes the improvement that we're now experiencing. We should be okay come May 15th, if not before. So I encourage you, all of you, to stay at home unless you need to engage in some of those activities that you're expected to engage in. Going to get groceries, going to the doctor, going to work if you're employed by one of those businesses that can be open. Otherwise, if you're not engaging in those type of activities, stay at home. Limit your gatherings to less than 10 people. If we can continue to do that, if we can be a little bit more diligent in doing that, we'll meet that final criteria that will allow us to return to a normal lifestyle, that will allow our business partners to reopen. And I guess the best thing we can do to help our businesses, continue to shop with them, as our local businesses in particular, continue to patronize them in any way possible, one. And the second way we can help them, follow those stay-at-home orders, because that will enable them to be able to open more quickly because of meeting that only criteria that we have not yet met. Thank you very much.